freight friends. Welcome to the Freight Trends podcast, where we explore the trends shaping the freight industry today and tomorrow. I'm Sierra, here with Curtis, the co-founder of Freight Trends. Today, we're excited to welcome three people to our podcast: Scooter Sayers, Tim Pauley, and Steve Heydendahl. Welcome all. Would each of you like to introduce yourselves to our viewers and listeners? Scooter, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Sierra. I'm glad to be here. So my name's Scooter Sayers. I've been in the LTL industry for quite some time. You can tell that by my gray hair. And if you're standing behind me, you can tell that from my thinning hair too. So that's pretty much testament to what the industry may do for you if you stay in long enough. So Curtis, sorry, it's just a matter of time. You know, that big bountiful head of curly hair with no gray hair in it that you have in your beard. Just wait.
Keep talking.
It's going to change. It's going to change. Anyway, I cut my teeth in LTL working at ABF Freight for about 25 years. There's still a lot about how I operate today, the things that I do that comes from working there. Just a great company that does a really good job developing people. I've dabbled in 3PL. I've done some consulting on the side. And today I spend most of my time focused on work I do with Cubiscan. They're in the freight dimensioning space. They've been providing dimensioning solutions for about 40 years. They kind of were a pioneer in dimensioning. And that's getting to be a very active part of LTL shipping these days. So I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to stay in LTL, connecting with shippers, carriers, 3PLs who I talk to every day, and talking about, issues related to freight dimensioning and LTL.
Awesome. Thanks, Scooter.
All right, Tim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Sierra, for having us on this call today. So I'm actually in an airport. Sorry for the bland background. But I, unlike Scooter, did not grow up in the LTL industry. I actually grew up in the IT industry, and I think it was about 9 years ago, I had a unique event where I created a new relationship with two companies in this space. And that kind of led me to really want to immerse myself in it, network with guys like you and learn more about it. I saw tremendous opportunities to apply technology and to basically create solutions in the market. I joined Coforge really with the intent of taking their logistics focused business to a higher level. And I really based that strategy on partnering with both technology companies and partnering with companies like Estes Express, which was one of the companies I started having a relationship about 9 years ago with. Coforge is one of the fastest growing, what we call right-sized global IT services provider. And what excites me about Coforge is how really the entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah, so when we talked to Estes about some things like maybe taking some of their products to the market, tremendous amount of support, and no one thought it was a crazy idea. So some of the things I think we're going to maybe talk about today is some of those products that we've brought to market, and really excited to share that with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it. Steve, I know you're also with Coforge. I can tell from your shirt. So if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself, and then we'll jump back to Tim to do just a quick overview of Coforge and who they are, what they do. But sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, it's all good. I also have a bland background, but I'm not in an airport. I'm in my house, so not too exciting behind me. I've been in the technology space with Coforge, implementing enterprise solutions for about 10 years from a technology standpoint, mostly and entirely using a low-code platform, which I'm hoping that we can talk about today. And it wasn't until recently, I want to say about a year ago, that maybe a little longer than a year ago, that Tim brought me under his wing to help work with him in the LTL space. And since then, I kind of transitioned from more of a horizontal technology implementer to more in the LTL space, which has been fun and very educational. There's quite a bit to it. So happy to be here and happy to provide my perspective.
Happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into the low code piece for sure. I think LTL is an industry perfectly aligned with that type of technology. I've said before many times, we've been kind of fake automated as an industry for a couple decades now with the rating capabilities and pricing programs and things like that. But traditionally speaking, the operations, things evolve and progress and change much quicker than the technology at especially these large carriers can keep up. So having kind of that flexible, configurable platform where you're just, moving around the building blocks to be relevant is pretty exciting.
Yeah, really, from what I've seen so far, it seems like a natural fit. There's a lot of different layers of power that different people have within the ecosystem of the low code platform. From me, it's more of the low level implementation, but there's a lot of flexibility that is provided and in a guided way and curated way for business users and power users of applications to just make changes on the fly. Like you said, Curtis, it just is a good relationship to have
It's
with
good
the local
fit.
platform.
And Steve, we'll do a hairline measure on you before the end of the show, just to get, since you're new to the industry, we'll check in a year.
It's already fading.
Yeah, Steve, I definitely want to come back to hear about low code. I feel like it makes more sense to go into CoForge in general, and then we can go into code in CoForge. So Tim, do you want to go into CoForge a little bit right now?
Yeah, so we're a 40-year-old company that acts like we're a startup, basically, and tremendous growth. The entire leadership team and really everyone on the team is hyper-focused on growth, and that growth comes through relationships with our customers and dedication to our employees. What makes us unique? We have one of the highest net promoter scores in the industry when it comes to not just mid-sized IT service providers, but really all sized. Our employee retention rate, basically, is around 11%, which is, I think, phenomenal. So the other thing that I mentioned before is really that entrepreneurial spirit. We started looking at things that we could see in the market that were really an industry dominant problem. And that's something that we really try to focus on as a company to differentiate ourselves. And then we find solutions that might fit that. We just crossed about 1.3 billion in revenue, headquartered in Princeton, New Jersey. I'm currently leading the North American sales team for transportation and logistics, and bringing those solutions to the market is really what it's all about.
I know you've got a whole suite of solutions so far, and assuming that'll keep growing, which one excites you the most, Tim? Like, with you're kind of, you've got a nice blend of technology and freight experience for the past number of years. So as far as what you think the industry needs, which one are you just like passionate about?
Well, there's two. One is Prism, which is the pricing and rating application that we acquired from Estes. And what really makes it unique is I don't think there's anything in the market that can do what it does. It focuses on automation. It minimizes all of the manual effort, not just for the business, but also IT, where you need to do certain things, and sometimes you have to depend on about 3 different departments to get things done. So Prism is probably number one. It's built on the low-code platform that Steve mentioned he's been part of for decades, and that also lends itself to being able to change really quickly. You can change the application in sometimes minutes and hours versus days and weeks. And I think that's just incredible. The other one that we just announced last week is in partnership with Salesforce. We've just launched a suite of services called CoForge Enzo, and we're partnered with one of the largest, I think they're the number one or number two sustainability companies in the world. That solution really looks at sustainability in two ways. One is the opportunity side for generating revenue from sustainability offerings in the market, and the other is to simplify the regulatory requirements around that space.
Nice. Yeah, Salesforce is a good ecosystem to build into and on top of. Kind of solves that distribution problem right up front because they're so broad.
Oh, no.
They're in every company, practically, but then the products that they offer, and especially Salesforce Net Zero Cloud, which is one of the things that's part of that Enzo solution, it's a platform that really takes care of everything from strategy to reporting to everything you need to do around sustainability.
Tim, I know that you also mentioned low code, and I know people have been waiting to talk to Steve about that. So Steve, can you go into a little bit about the low code platforms and how you are quickly making changes now and what this means for the logistics industry as a whole, and then also for CoForge?
Yeah. So the low code platform we use, it's a great choice for this. It's called Pega, really. It's the Pega platform, which is a rules-based engine, low code, obviously, and it is very powerful. It has a lot of capability across all industries, really. But we have specifically leveraged its capabilities for Prism. So when designing applications using the Pega platform, it's best practice, I guess, to use what are called cases, which is essentially something that bundles up a life cycle or a flow from end to end. So you have a start, a middle, and an end, and things happen in between and all that good stuff. So Pega fundamentally, is a rules-based engine where you typically implement these cases and it's through this strategy that we've or that Prism is based on. So Prism is based on case management. When you are creating and configuring things within Prism, there are a lot of things that happen, right? There's history that's being captured at every click of the mouse, basically. History is being captured, changes are being versioned, things are being saved, it's being routed to the right people. So all of this kind of works together with the low-code platform for us to be able to quickly implement solutions. Because it's low-code, we can also expose certain things to the end users and to power users to change on the fly. Most of the application is created by a developer. A developer creates the initial application. This is in general with Pega. Like a developer will create the initial application, the initial case type, right, and then send it off to production and let it go live. A developer or a sysadmin, Pega developer, whatever, will also expose certain rules or certain things that you can do from that power user perspective to change the way that the case operates. So things, for example, that are very common are lists of values. So if there are different lists of values that need to pop up for users as they're making their changes, they can do that. So none of those changes will require any development cycle or developer intervention. It's actually just completely owned by whoever owns the application at that point, whoever it's live under. So what this means is that you have the very powerful Pega rules platform that has a lot of out-of-the-box functionality, like the history that I've mentioned, the auditing capabilities, versioning, but then also a very rapid change that you can do in layers. The first simple layer, and in some cases it's not a very simple layer. Actually, with Prism, we've allowed quite a few complex things to be configured by the end user. But you have the first layer that can be configured, and then anything else would kind of go back to the dev team. And like Tim said, changes aren't months long because it's low code. It's weeks typically at most. And once you're done, you push it to production and it's ready. So what that means is that if there's any change in the industry, either you as a power user or business user for your group can make that change instantly on your end through these curated rules that you can change, or a developer would take just a couple weeks. We listen to the requirements, we take a few weeks, we make the change, and then we push it to production and it's ready for use. So very rapid life cycle of development from start to completion, different ways to tackle it as well.
That's great, Steve. So I've actually got one quick comment and then a question to Scooter on that. What I kind of got out of that is almost the level of gamification with every click and everything that happens within the environment being tracked, which then can lead to just better functionality. Often in our industry, it's so fragmented that different systems are in use. One is being partially used for this, and then we do this sort of thing out of this one. Kind of the biggest challenge quite often is just being able to capture the full breadth of all the clicks essentially that are happening. So that's really cool that it's not only is it, the platform to build custom tools, it's also kind of capturing the user engagement and traffic, I guess you could say. Scooter, as more as LTL pricing is quickly getting more quantified, dimensions, cube, different things are being wrapped into the rates. And right now you see a lot of this in different rules tariff items with cubic minimums or, per mileage rates, space driven rates like low density, cubic capacity. How do you think, the quickly changing world of better data on the front end at even just a quote or a transaction level needs to translate and get calculated into the right accurate rate, using more than just weight, using space, using dimensions, so that there's fewer corrections later. If we're rating quicker on the front end, that really doesn't matter a whole lot if you have 30+% disputes, invoice discrepancies, things like that on the back end.
Yeah, I think all the carriers really want to get more granular with what they're doing. I mean, any carrier, when they look at a customer, they want to make money serving a customer. And I think they're migrating away from a standpoint where I want to make sure that I'm making money with each of my customers to they really want to make money on every shipment that I get from each of my customers. That's how getting granular allows them to tailor their pricing more specifically and get the business that they want at the right price that they want, that the customer is willing to pay for. So I think it's better for everyone to get more granular by doing that. And I think that, when you think about low code, I mean, tariff pages and LTL, you go look at any carrier's tariff page for their customer today and what it looked like 20 years ago, it looks the same. But we're now moving into an era where carriers are wanting to price their freight by themselves without having to have all of these legacy things like a class tariff like Zarlite, 1992, and in the NMF system. They want to be able to price freight on their own, just like you go buy an airplane ticket. And to be able to do that, they need to be able to move nimbly and to structure pricing in the way that they want to today that's different than tomorrow. And I think you need applications and systems that are low code in order to be able to roll stuff like that out fast within days and weeks rather than weeks, months, or years.
For sure. The huge disconnect has always been, most carrier costs are activity driven and attributes of the freight, the configuration, the packaging, the size, but that's still not really been captured and calculated into the correct rate there on the spot. It's accounted for on the front end with entire account analysis, but still a lot of assumptions, and you're still looking. Basically what this allows is getting away from averages to building the quick functionality to be able to model more attributes of the shipment and derive a price based on the true inputs.
Yep, you're exactly right. That Zarlite tariff at class 77.5 is an average, and for one carrier versus the other, it may be good, it may be bad for that lane, but it's an average price for Dallas to Kansas City at class 77.5, and each carrier really wants to take that shipment and price it the way that fits them, not the way it fits some tariff that they had nothing to do building. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good segue. Could you talk a bit about these NMF changes that are coming down the pipe? I know there's a lot of buzz and conversation around it now. I think maybe some misconception as well. I think a lot of people just think this is the full move to dimensional pricing that we've all been waiting for. How do you interpret these changes?
They're going to be big in a way, but not as big as if you peel back the layers of the onion. They're not going to be as big as people think because we're really largely there. I mean, the NMF today, the NMFC guide has got about 7,000 or 8,000 items in it. And there's really just a handful that really control freight. So when you think about it, it's really kind of like Pareto, right? The 80% of the commodities move under 20% of commodity code. So We've got these big, massive categories like furniture, plastic articles, sporting goods, and they all fold into a single NMF item that's density based now. And so what they're talking about doing early next year is really kind of doing that across the board for most everything in the book. We're really kind of there already, but this is really kind of codifying and memorializing it. And the big thing that it's doing is if they go through with the plan changes, they're probably going to impact about 3/4 of the items that are in the book. They're all going to get canceled and rolled up under one of these general categories like furniture, sporting goods. So it doesn't matter whether it is a pool stick or a pool ball or a pool toy. It's going to go athletic goods, and it's going to be priced based on. It's going to be classed based on density, and that's going to simplify things for everybody. But we're kind of largely there. What it's going to mean is, again, those items, once they make the change, they never have to go back and touch those things. Today, they'll take pool sticks, they'll make them class 100. Then a year from now, they'll make them class 85 or class 125 based on another density study they did. And so they're always doing these things. Tomorrow, when they make the change, they'll never have to touch those items again. They just go density and they stay that way. And it just, every shipment falls within the scale to the proper class based upon its density.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's more implementing a framework that slides up and down depending on the inputs versus here's a hard flat rule, that has to be maintained and looked at every few years just to make sure it's still accurate.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They're really kind of changing the framework. They're shifting from a mindset of we need to be able to classify every single product individually to we really just need to classify and commoditize the exceptions, right? The telephone poles and the agricultural implements of the world. Anything else, if it goes in a cardboard box and it goes on a pallet, I just need to put it into a general bucket and classify it based on density.
Steve, have you guys, with your Prism product, have you integrated to any dimensioner providers yet?
No, not that I.
That might be something coming down the pipe. Just, I foresee the battle, I think, and Scooter, correct me if I'm wrong, but getting the hardware itself to the place we're in now has kind of been the focus for these providers in the industry. I think now the next chapter is really going to be get these units that are essentially nodes, they're information nodes collecting information in all the different warehouses and terminals around the country, get that more connected. So it's, it's just inherently part of the digital fabric. It's not manual entry.
Yeah, it's critical data that the carriers need, and they want to get it as soon as they can. They want to get that accurate data as soon as they can, whether they're collecting it or they're getting it from the shipper. They would prefer to get it from the shipper because that means they can get the accurate data they need before they even pick up the freight with an electronic bill of lading. That's really, I think, kind of the future is the shippers that provide the carrier all the data they need about their shipments before the driver even shows up. And, that just lets everything go faster. The carrier can literally rate the bill as the driver is driving away. But more importantly, like you mentioned, Curtis, it's not the speed of rating a bill fast. It's rating it where the shipper and the carrier agree on what the price is going to be. And there's not a surprise. I mean, it doesn't help if I rate that bill immediately if I send it to you and it's not what you expect it to be. But if I can send you a bill immediately and it's exactly what you expected as a shipper, you pay faster and the carrier just hauls your freight and everybody's happy. I think that's where we're headed to, is shippers providing carriers the data they need up front on electronic bill of lading, and the carriers are going to find ways to incentivize those shippers to do that and reward them for doing it. And if they aren't willing to do it, then there's going to be a penalty or a lack of service that entails for not being the type of customer that the carrier wants to work with.
Yeah, for sure. I see it in an overly simplified way, getting down to basically 2 digital handshakes, one at the front for the price, one at the end for the successful delivery. And of course, you're always going to have exceptions. It's a high risk dynamic industry with a lot of variables that carriers and shippers can't, account for, can't control. I love the Pareto principle. If you can nail 80% of the issues or of your volume, most of the rest will take care of itself.
I know you're not able to tell us what laws are coming down the pipeline in 5 to 10 years, but what other trends, we're freight trends, we have to ask this. What other trends or evolutions do you see coming to the logistics industry within the next 5 or 10 years?
I think one of the big ones is that granularity. It's the carrier being able to price every shipment in a vacuum and getting the price they want on that shipment. I think COVID did a lot of things to kind of change how carriers and shippers operate. And one of the big changes I saw was that before COVID, it was very common for a carrier like a national carrier to expect you, the shipper, to give them all of your freight, right? You're the shipper. I'm carrier X, that's a nationwide carrier. We're doing business together. I expect you to give me all your business. And I don't want to share the business with somebody else. I want all the business. I think COVID really taught everybody that I don't need to be seen as the sole provider, because when something happens that I can't control, something big, and I can't serve you, I want you to have someone else that you can turn to. And on top of that, I really don't want all of your business sometimes. There may be some pieces of your business like long freight or residential freight. I really don't want that. And I'm okay with you giving that to somebody else because they may want that business, but I don't. So I think that is just another mark of the granularity going on is every carrier out there is an LTL carrier. It's easy to cookie cutter them and think that they're all the same, but Curtis can attest to this too. Every carrier is unique and different about what they do and how they operate and what they want and they don't want. And I think that's part of the secret is to really find happiness in LTL. You got to align the interests between the shipper and the carrier better. And getting granular is one way to do that.
Absolutely.
Steve, in freight tech, what do you see changing in the next 5 to 10 years? I'd be interested to see if it connects with what Scooter said.
With low code platforms such as Pega, there's constantly new features being added. Prism right now is the pricing and rating engine. Certainly there are other aspects of the industry that could be also hosted on a Pega application. But also, like I said, updates are being made all the time. New technology like AI is fully incorporatable into Pega right now. In fact, some flavors of it already have been. So, like OCR, like intelligently reading like bills of lading, digesting the contents and spinning tasks based off of that, or automatically updating your pricing based on tariff, whatever, right? All of that is within the realm of possibility now, and the technology is only going to get better. So there's a lot there that can be used, and anytime you hear about some new buzzword out there like AI, ChatGPT, Pega is going to find a way to put it in, and so it will be available to be leveraged in some way.
Yeah, follow-up question on that, Steve. Traditionally, things are built over on Tech Island, right, by a bunch of developers, and then they're kind of launched and delivered and thrown over to the business, the users. Hopefully there's some feedback and things like that, some iteration. But do you think that low code and platforms like Pega will shrink that gap and have more business stakeholders collaboratively working with the devs, or even being able to do some configuration and some things that might have been an IT ticket or something on the roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been on a number of projects where a business stakeholder wants to and is fully capable of having access to Dev Island and playing with all of the features of Dev Island. And that gap that you mentioned is closing, getting narrower every year. The code is getting lower. So yes, absolutely. Pega is actively trying to expose as much configuration as they can to an end user. And from my perspective, like for what I do, I work so let me back up a second. I do primarily a development paradigm. I forget what you call it. A development methodology called Agile. So Agile methodology is more of an iterative approach where you work closer with the business and with stakeholders to try and work with them to find the solution, right? So over the course of a couple of weeks, we would build something, show them something, hear the feedback about it, make the change, and show them again. Whereas other more antiquated approaches of development, sometimes referred to as waterfall, are different, where you get your set of requirements up front. You get the whole library of the dictionary of things you need to do, and you build it, and then 2 years later you deliver the solution, and then you get all the feedback. I very much prefer Agile. I think and it's not, waterfall isn't wrong. They're just two different types of methodologies. I think Agile is a lot better for this industry, at least, because of first of all, the complexities, and second of all, the change that could occur. And when I work on a project, I'm typically working with business stakeholders. I'm typically working with subject matter experts, business users of what the end application will be. And so what that does is it provides me the ability to get input from their perspective, the direct end users of the application, on what they want to see, how they want to work, where their mouse and eyes go on the screen as they're trying to work, rather than, deal with some design specs and then, it's kind of guesswork. There's more layers to go through on where those changes should be, more chances for it to be wrong. So anyways, I talked a lot about that, but yes, the gap is closing a lot. And with Pega and low code, it's a lot easier to work with the end users of the product, get the direct feedback, so that it's more relevant to them, more personalized, better for them to use. And it gives them the opportunity to feel more comfortable with the application before it goes live. So they get a lot of face time with it, they get a lot of experience with it before they're thrusted into it and have to use it all of a sudden. So that gets them more comfortable with using the application and adapting to the differences of their new system versus the old system.
Yeah.
It really just leads to a better way of doing things. I mean, I can attest years ago at the big carrier I worked at, where I had a number of IT staff available to support my efforts. The worst products that they would turn out would be the ones where they built exactly what I asked for, right? Because the value came from having an IT staff that understood the business. And when I would map out that, here is what I need built up front, they would take it and say, well, actually, I think you need this and you don't want to do that. That's what would end up being built, was that iterative approach of having the IT side understood the business, and you had that back and forth going on, rather than build this, right? Because every time that's all they did was build what I asked, it was the worst product, right? Because they did exactly what I said, and that was the wrong thing to do. So
that's definitely something I've learned, and a lot of my coworkers have learned, is that to be a good developer, you don't just do what the business wants you to do. It's actually more about what you shouldn't do, really.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
I think that goes for more than just IT. And same with, Steve, what you were saying about Agile. I use Agile. I'm not in IT, and I love it. Like, I think that a lot of our viewers and listeners could take this more than just the Agile part of this podcast, but the Agile part of this podcast and apply it to their real lives. And then also, like with communications, if we go to communications for something that we need done, they're the subject matter experts. They'll know how to execute it. We could tell them how we want them to execute it, but then there's a whole nother way that they would be able to, and they would be able to do it amazingly.
Yeah, I think really anything you can make the case that iterating towards success is better than just jumping into the deep end, right? Whether it's any project like that you're working on, personal, professional, any goal that you're working towards, baby stepping it is typically, in the long run, going to be better than just, doing the whole thing at once, right?
I think it's all about keeping those feedback loops tight and keeping them turning, and then it turns into a flywheel effect. You've got nonstop, testing and pushing back, and then it just keeps momentum going. You keep iterating, making it better and better. And then you get it to a point where you can kind of step back and it's still spinning, just by the operational vortex that's been unleashed on it.
Yeah, it's called going slow so you can go fast. So
yeah, slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yep.
Slow and steady wins the race. Just a time check. I know we don't want this podcast to be 5 hours long. Not that it's going to be. But I have one final logistics question, and then I have a few ending fun questions. Scooter, what's coming down the pipeline in LTL industry news?
I think we're going to see a really interesting story playing out, especially in 2025, as we have some of these big national carriers that have invested billions into their network. seeing how that plays out. If they're going to be able to do this and still maintain their margins, especially in a soft environment. Still not seeing any signs of anything that's going to wake up LTL. It's still kind of soft out there. The big publicly traded carriers, their business is still down overall relative to where they were before Yellow closed, and they absorbed Yellow's business. The signs are not there, but the carriers have gotten so good that typically when business is soft and you're investing big money, it's a recipe for disaster. But they're all doing a pretty good job. But at some point, something's going to have to happen, or some of these carriers are going to be like, I got to get some freight in my networks. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And we've got one carrier that's growing from a regional carrier to a national carrier. That's going to be another interesting dynamic to watch. Those are the things that I've got my eye on, is how some of these big national carriers navigate these big growth plans they have to take on market share, and how this new entrant from the truckload space creating an LTL national carrier, how that's going to work out for them.
That's interesting. I'm really excited for 2025 and to see what it brings. And I'll have a checklist of everything that you said on this podcast, and I'll be checking it off as it happens. Scooter, and then Steve, I'll get to you. Scooter, how can people get in touch with you if they listen to this podcast and are just now raving fans of Mr. Sayers?
Probably the easiest way is just on LinkedIn. I'm guessing that there's not that many Scooters out there. So if you just type Scooter in LinkedIn, I'm probably going to come up, and I make my contact info available there. So you can reach me there, or just send me a direct message. That's probably the easiest way to find me, is on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And you'll probably have mutuals because everyone in logistics knows each other. It's like a small city. Mm-hmm. Steve, how can people get in touch with you?
Same. I'm on LinkedIn, and there's not a lot of Steve Heydendahls out there, so you can find me right on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, thank you guys. Before I say the closing, I just want to actually thank you for joining us today. This was awesome getting to talk to you. I learned so much. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
You bet.
Good to be here.
All right. Well, thank you for listening or watching this episode today. Please be sure to also follow Freight Trends on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X so you don't miss anything. If you haven't yet subscribed to our newsletter, go to freight-trends.com. If you're interested in sponsoring Freight Trends, send an email to sponsorships@freight-trends.com. Catch us on the next episode and let us know who you'd like to see in future episodes by emailing info@freight-trends.com or sending us a DM to our social media pages. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.